acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of Senator Isaac Melly, the immediate former and first Senator for UASIN GISHU County under the 2010 Constitution. In our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to him, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish him a fruitful visit. I thank you. Let me also welcome Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. Welcome back to the House.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable Senators, there's a petition by Joel Kenduiwa, a member of the minority Ngerek community, concerning the resettlement of the community following their proposed eviction from the South Nandi Forest in Nandi County. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Orders 2261A and 2302B, I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted through the clerk by Joel Kenduiwa, a member of the minority Ngerek community, concerning the resettlement of the community following their proposed eviction from South Nandi Forest in Nandi County. 2, as you are aware, under Article 1191 of the Constitution, and I quote, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation. The salient issues raised in the said petition are as follows. 1, that the minority Ngerek community, comprising about 244 families, has resided in the South Nandi Forest at Ngerek village, Kumia location, and Gwen constituency in Nandi since before independence. B, that in the year 1996, the then government proposed the settlement of the minority Ngerek community from the forest to enable its conservation and protection as a water catchment area. C, that under the proposed Chepkuma exchange program, the 244 families from the Ngerek community were to be relocated from an area comprising 466 hectares and to be resettled at a parcel of land comprising approximately 1,000 acres in Yala and Kapkani area in Nandi County. D, that once the said parcel was identified, prominent persons who are not members of the Ngerek community immediately moved in and occupied the land, leaving the minority Ngerek community without a place to relocate. E, that subsequently the government, through the Kenya Forest Services, issued eviction notices to the said persons who had unlawfully occupied identified parcel of land. The said persons moved to court to stop the KFS from evicting them, and the court ruled in the year 2007 that KFC should proceed with eviction of the unlawful occupants and resettle the rightful people who are the minority Ngerek community. That F, that the National Land Commission also investigated the matter and in mid-2018 issued a 2-month notice to the persons unlawfully occupying the land set aside for resettlement of the minority community to vacate the said land. However, the said persons have not moved from the said land. G, that the Kenya Forest Service has now issued notices to the minority Ngerek to vacate the area that they occupy in the South Nandi Forest to enable KFS to plant trees and conserve the forest as a water catchment area. DH, that while this is being done, the minority Ngerek community are left with nowhere to go, as the land identified and set aside by the government for their resettlement was grabbed by prominent people who have refused to vacate from the said land. 4, the petitioner therefore prays that the Senate investigates this matter with a view of ensuring that persons unlawfully occupying the land set aside for resettlement of the minority Ngerek community are immediately evicted from the said land, and that any titles issued thereon are revoked. B, that the government through KFS or any other agency is stopped evicting the minority Ngerek community from the South Nandi Forest before it secured land for the resettlement. And C, that the rights of the indigenous and minority groups in the country, including forest-dwelling communities, are protected and upheld. Honorable Senator, to Standing Order number 231, I shall now now allow comments, observations, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Muru.
The Speaker, when I hear minority groups, and particularly from forest evictions, Mr. Speaker, I feel for them. And I've always said in this house since last term, some of us are lucky to be here. Squatters, particularly in persons who have occupied spaces that have been removed from areas that otherwise are called forests, Mr. Speaker, suffer immensely, especially young children and school-going children, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 10 schools are closed. 10 schools. With about, Mr. Speaker, almost 10,000 children being out of school. In 4,000, because it's 10,000 population, 4,000 children are out of school. The Speaker, the same. I know people who were so clever when we were in school together in Embobut, who would now be in better position than myself. They would have been the doctors, the engineers, the lawyers, Mr. Speaker, the people who would have made a difference, perhaps even the senators and governors, and any other position. But because these inhuman evictions, wanton violation of human rights, Mr. Speaker, has led to a situation where people were denied a chance to go to school. So I believe that the relevant committee you will put, Mr. Speaker, to deal with this matter, must look at it with the seriousness it deserves. And I want to challenge my senior, Honorable Tobiko, who is the CS in that ministry. Mr. Speaker, he must rise to the occasion. He must rise beyond parochial interest. He must rise beyond communal interest. And Mr. Speaker, understand that any violation of human rights.
Speaker, what is your point of order, Senator?
Is the majority leader in order to discuss a CS here who is not in a position to defend himself? Issues of Tobiko, I thought he was talking about the petition. Let him be relevant to the petition.
Senator, Majority Leader, you are out of order to discuss.
I am not out of order, Mr. Speaker.
Who is not here to defend himself.
There is only one. I am not out of order, and I stand my ground. The only person who has responsibility.
What's your point of order?
I am not out of order, and I am not.
Malala, what is your point of order?
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, is the leader of my majority in order to start exchanging with the chair of the House. If the Speaker has ruled, Mr. Speaker, it is parliamentary for him to obey the rules of this House. The leader of my majority is not any senior to the Speaker and this House, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, he should conduct himself in a parliamentary way that honors the dignity of this House. And this has gone on for a very long epoch in this House, Mr. Speaker. And we want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
Order members. What's your point of order,
so
Senator?
Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority is not conducting himself in a parliamentary way.
Order leader.
And the issue of him shouting and heckling at us at any point, Mr. Speaker, is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, you must take charge of this House. This House cannot be controlled by the leader of majority. This House is controlled and chaired by the Speaker. Thank you.
Order, leader
Point
of majority.
order.
Order members. I said, order members. I've ruled that it's not fair to discuss a CS who cannot defend himself in the House. Proceed along the lines I have given direction.
Mr. Speaker, is it because I want to get very clearly your ruling so that we can obey from now going forward? Are you saying this Senate will never mention a cabinet secretary? By virtue, just because he comes from a particular community, we can't mention his name. So that we now know that from today henceforth, if a senator mentions the name of a cabinet secretary and his responsibility is out of order.
Order members. I have capacity also to understand in what context you are discussing. Mentioning is different from trying to discuss the character over a CS. If you're just mentioning a name, there's no problem. But when you start discussing him, then that is out of order. Leader, proceed.
No.
The Speaker, I want to insist that the Cabinet Secretary must rise above any parochial interest, any communal interest, any personal interest, Mr. Speaker, and rise to protect the interests of the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we must always understand that those who hold public office are already in trust, Mr. Speaker.
What's
they
your point
already
of order?
trust because...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with tremendous respect, I would want to refer the House to Standing Order number 96. 1. 96-1. Page 66. Mr. Speaker, and I want my colleagues to listen to me carefully. Mr.
Order,
Speaker,
members.
and allow me to read this paragraph. 96, subsection 1. Neither the personal conduct of the President nor the conduct of the Speaker, of any judge, nor the judicial conduct of any other person performing judicial functions, nor any conduct of the head of state or government or the representative in Kenya of any friendly country, or the conduct of the holder of an office whose removal from such office is dependent upon decision of the Senate shall be referred to adversely except upon specific substantive motion of which at least 3 days, and I want you to underline that, at least 3 days notice has been given. Yeah? Mr. Speaker.
The CS falls
Speaker.
under one of the categories.
Mr. Speaker.
Okay, listen.
Mr. Speaker.
Order,
Mr. Speaker,
members.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
By the way, the
Speaker.
petitioners are in the gallery.
I'm on my feet,
Following
Mr. Speaker.
This order. Okay, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I think my colleague has been with me in this House since 2013. And he knows the rules. And I think it's a bit unfortunate that at this particular stage, I saw it yesterday when he mentioned Olekina, a colleague who was not in the House. And it's happening again today. He is mentioning a cabinet minister or a cabinet secretary who is not in the House, or who has not been summoned by the House to come and I think we are going outside the jurisdiction of this.
Order, members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of...
He is not in order, Mr. Speaker, and I want you to rule that.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I believe that the senator is misleading the House. The cabinet secretary does not fall under any of those sections. The Senate is not the House that removes or impeaches a cabinet secretary. That is the National Assembly. So I believe that the senator is misleading the House.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I want you to give guidance in this House. You have made a ruling on this matter. You have already ruled the majority leader out of order. The Speaker, are we reopening debate on this matter again after your ruling?
I made that ruling, and the leader of majority should proceed along the lines I have ruled.
The Speaker, I have no doubt with my experience and the knowledge I have in this House. And if there is anyone who is supposed to defend cabinet secretaries, it's myself. The Speaker, because in any case, they come from the majority side. But for the best interest of this country, we cannot start saying as a House, we will not be questioning cabinet secretaries when they are running a docket. Tomorrow, it will be Senator Mutula Kilonzo raising an issue about another docket of Ministry of Government. I'm just saying that when a cabinet secretary is running a docket of the position that is dealing with matters of minority groups like the people who are in the gallery, the Speaker, we have the opportunity here to pontify and to enjoy the debate. But Mr. Speaker, there are people who are sleeping outside, whose houses have been burned. Mr. Speaker, you are DC in Marakwet. You know how people used to suffer in Embobut. Mr. Speaker, we cannot, and let me tell you, I want to say one thing that I will never stop saying. Anything involving the suffering of any squatter in this country, Mr. Speaker, is personal and emotional to me. And as a leader, if I got an opportunity to come and sit in this house and defend them, Mr. Speaker, I will defend them whatever the cost. Mr. Speaker, because this is an issue that when we are leaders, we are in position of privilege. We must speak for those who are weak, Mr. Speaker. We must speak for those who are downtrodden. I hope the committee, Mr. Speaker, that is going to be given that responsibility will take the responsibility seriously. Mr. Speaker, we have not said we are not going to protect the forest. We have not said, Mr. Speaker, we cannot protect the environment. But, Mr. Speaker, even when we deal with the protection of environment, it must be done in a manner, because it's the same government that has the power to move people who are living in a particular area to another area to ensure that they are settled. But even if that is the case, Mr. Speaker, why would you want to punish small children who are less than 18 years? Why would you want to punish school-going children for the sins of their father, assuming even that they lived in a particular area? Why would people want to live in deplorable conditions? So my message is this, that as a nation, we must rise up to the occasion. The minister in that ministry must rise up to the occasion. And it's not even a question, Mr. Speaker, of Minister of Environment only. Mr. Speaker, this is a matter that cuts across, because the enforcement and the removal of people is always a joint effort of the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Internal Security, Mr. Speaker. And we must ensure that when they do what they do it in the best interest of the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I support that petition, and I want to tell the petitioners in the gallery, Mr. Speaker, you have a defender. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure them you have a defender of your rights in this house in the person of Kipchumba Murkomen, the senator. First of all, the senator of Elgeyo Marakwet County.
Senator James Agri-Orengo.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me apologize for coming a little late when this matter was already on the floor of the House. But right at the outset, let me say that I'm supporting the petition. And having said that, we must remember the history about these evictions. It is important that they're put into perspective. And no amount of shouting will alter the history behind these evictions. There are some born-again Christians who today will speak very loudly about the issue of evictions. But when these evictions started right at the beginning, they were quiet about these evictions. Mr. Speaker, I heard the majority leader say that he is the one who can defend the cabinet secretaries in this particular chamber or in parliament. And he could have defended them. But, Mr. Speaker, the responsibility of government in trying to, settle those who have been evicted and making sure that the rule of law is maintained is something which we cannot debate about. And is something which if we begin pointing fingers at each one of them, each one of us, we are going to run into a lot of trouble. I can tell you that. Because if you start pointing fingers without offering solutions, you are not being part of the solution. Mr. Speaker, this issue is so emotive that you can see even in the side opposite, the language is different. They are saying they are prepared to speak on their own behalf as senators and not mind about whether they are part of the government or not. Mr. Speaker, for this matter to be resolved through this petition, we must find a solution, a lasting solution. What we are trying to do now, the Mau issue is so important that if you just begin to pointing fingers to particular members or to particular officers in government, including the cabinet secretary concerned, we are not being part of the solution. This is a matter which, if this Senate, if need be, we can summon cabinet secretaries. And I dare say, in this country, we are so fearful. We are so fearful. This is a matter in another jurisdiction. We would have summoned the president before this parliament. I'm telling you. In this house, we could have summoned the deputy president to tell us what is happening and how they are dealing with this problem. But we are being very fearful instead of dealing with the problem. Yesterday I was hearing what the security team was saying on the ground about this matter, how they're dealing with it. In fact, what the security team is doing is something, if you look at it in terms of the Constitution, it's not quite right. And it's also not quite right to point at somebody in the opposition or in the side of the opposition or the minority, trying to point fingers. There is opposition. There's opposition. There's opposition. Yeah,
Order, members.
Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Let those who are talking about there being no opposition know what happened in the National Assembly. If you're beginning to talk about there being no opposition. But the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Speaker, I want us to be part of the solution. I want us to be part of the solution. And it is part of incitement of our people talking without offering solutions. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have a background in Kericho, I have a background in Narok, and if you want to know how I'm related to people in Narok, ask Ole Nampaso. I have relationships in Kajiado. I have relationship in Meru. I'm a true Kenyan. I'm a true Kenyan. And Isiolo, just ask Honorable Fatula Dulo, if you have any doubt, just ask her during the elections what happened.
All of us are going to be part of the solution. Is he not, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker said you may be part of the problem. The word may is permissive. You can either be part of the solution or you may be part of the problem. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But since you live in the twilight zone as far as the English language is concerned, I sympathize with you.
What is your point of order, Senator Murkomen?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the minority leader is being economic with truth, Mr. Speaker. Because as a former Minister of Lands, he created the problem. So, Mr. Speaker, it will be impossible for him to now try, Mr. Speaker, to insinuate that I might be part of the problem when, Mr. Speaker, we are going to discuss about who might have been the real cause of the problem, Mr. Speaker. The former Minister of Lands is sitting here, Mr. Speaker, pontifying, and is the cause of the problem.
Order, member. Order.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was in E10 with the majority leader, and he could see what the people here think of me as compared to him. He was not allowed to speak in E10, but I was allowed to speak. And if he has any problem about what I did, let us to go with him tomorrow in the Embobut Forest, and he will realize what I have done in this area. The whole day we have been with the majority leader. And I think being personal with me, I don't mind. If you go there, we can take each other on, but I don't want to be personal.
Order, members, okay. Order, members. Senator Cherargei, where the petition has come from.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to join and welcome the great people of Nandi who have presented this petition. Mr. Speaker, can you protect me?
Order, members. Order, members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say from onset, I want to welcome the people of Ngerek and Chepkumia ward in Mgwen sub-county, Nandi County. During when I campaigned, I was able to visit one of the primary schools that are near there, and I know there is a big problem in the issues that is affecting the issues of Ngerek in Chepkumia ward, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition, and I want to assure them that we will do anything within our powers to ensure that this issue of land is resolved, especially in Nandi County. And I want, Mr. Speaker, for purposes of record, this issue I had brought to attention to the Cabinet Secretary in charge of lands, Madam Farida Karonei, among other issues that we are facing. And I think Ngerek as a community, they have been marginalized because these are the people who are displaced from the other lower part and they were brought there, Mr. Speaker, sir. And most of them are living in deplorable, in very sad conditions, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think they need to get some of these title deeds so that they can be able to continue with their daily, they can be able to be assured to build even, Mr. Speaker, sir, and to ensure they farm, Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to assure them as their representative in this House that we'll canvass this issue and bring appropriate solution. I know this Constitution has provided, and there are many other issues, even the issue of Kericho and Bomet historical injustices. These were the same issues that we have been trying to address. And I want to say, let us use this example of addressing this issue to resolve so many land historical injustices. I know there are many issues. We want to protect our forests. We have vested interests. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, sir, to bring your attention, which I will also resist, to tell Cabinet Environment, Mr. Tobiko, there was an issue where he had issued eviction orders along Sangalo, Kebuloniki in Masab sub-county to move people, and yet the cut line had been approved, Mr. Speaker. So all those issues, as much as we want to do these things, Mr. Speaker, let us do it in a humane way. Let us protect our environment. I want to assure the people of Chepkumia, the Ngerek minority, that as your senator, I will stand with you through thick and thin to ensure justice is done, be it legal or extra-legal means. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order, member, order. Hello, order members. Order. I'm standing, order members. As the chair of the legal committee, we don't expect you to talk about illegal means. That is out of order. Honest, senators. Order members, I think I've warned him. Honorable senators, pursuant, order members, pursuant to, because of considering a time, pursuant to standing order 2321, the petition stands committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources, order members, and natural resources. In terms of standing order 2332, the committee is required in not more than 60 days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioners by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. There's another petition by landowners affected by construction of the Eldoret Town Bypass project in UASIN GISHU regarding delayed compensation by the National Land Commission. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2261A and 22302, I hereby report to the Senate that a petition has been submitted through the clerk by the landowners affected by construction of the Eldoret Town Bypass project in UASIN GISHU regarding delayed compensation by the National Land Commission. As you are aware, under Article 1191 the Constitution, and I quote, every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation. The salient issues raised in the petition are that the national government intends to construct 33 kilometers road which starts at Chepkalslai Trading Center on the Eldoret-Nairobi Highway and terminates at Mailitisa Junction on the Eldoret-Malaba Highway. That the project affects 256 parcels of land along the said route across Ngeria, Kapsaret, Simat, Kamagut, Leseru locations in UASIN GISHU County. That the Vice Gazette Notice number 1822 of 18th March 2016 and 5265 of 2nd June 2017, the National Land Commission published notices of intention to compulsorily acquire the said parcels of land pursuant to the provisions of Section 107, 5 and 112 of the Land Act number 6 of 2012. That subsequently in January 2018, the National Land Commission issued award letters to the affected landowners which would pave way for their compensation and commencement of construction work on the bypass project. E, that a number of issues have since arisen with regard to the said compensation, namely delayed compensation, whereby contrary to section 115 and 125 of the Act, owners of the said parcels of land are yet to be compensated 8 months since the onward letters were issued by the Natural Land Commission. 2, unexplained undervaluation of certain parcels of land. 3, first compensation of compulsory acquired parcels of land contrary to section 125 of the Land Act, which required prompt and full payment in all cases of compulsory acquisition. Illegal compensation, whereby persons unlawfully occupying government land have been prioritized for compensation. And 5, payment of too low disturbance allowance to the affected owners equivalent to 15% of the assessed value of the land. The petitioners therefore pray that the Senate urgently investigates this matter and takes appropriate action thereon, including A, compelling the National Land Commission to avail the original award letters in respect of all affected landowners for purposes of authentication. B, ensuring that the genuine landowners are compensated promptly. C, recommending that the proposed construction of the Eldoret bypass project is halted until all the affected landowners have been compensated in full. And D, ensuring that intended compensation of persons unlawfully occupying government land is stopped forthwith. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 231, I shall now allow comments, observations, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Senator Olekin, what's your point of order?
Speaker, I know people will make comments. I don't want to make comment. I'm just wondering, considering this matter is already seized, the committee is already seized of this matter in terms of investigating it, and it was even widely reported across the country. Mr. Speaker, what is the status of in that situation? Because I know the Vice Chair is here, and I know they even visited the parcels of where the parcels of land are. The Speaker is how should we proceed in such a situation?
What's your point? Since I already approved the petition and it's in the House, the Chair can comment something.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We visited the bypass, but we have not. We advised the petitioners to submit the petition to the so that we can take it from there.
You had already chosen me.
Yeah, I had given Olekina.
Mr.
So
Speaker,
let's use 3 minutes so that we have.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've always been an extremist when it comes to freedom and liberty, when it comes to issues of justice, and when it comes to issue of environment. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk about the environment in this country, it behooves us as this generation to realize that this is the only time in history that we have a government which is willing to protect our water catchment areas. Mr. Speaker, sir, this issue of land, issue of compensation, when it comes to bypass, we had a big issue, Mr. Speaker, sir, in Nairobi, when people were making a lot of noise as to why the bypass should go through the national park. Now we have an issue of the bypass here. I think it is right. But Mr. Speaker, sir, when we're in this house and we are talking about issues of water catchment areas, it is highly hypocritical when we try to make it a red herring matter, to divert the attention and start focusing on other issues. What is clear, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that this House must always adhere to protect the environment. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we deviate from the main point, Mr. Speaker, sir,
I think stick to the petition.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point?
It is not fair to say I am speaking to the...
Order.
I am focusing to the...
What's your point of order?
What is the point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Is Senator Ledamo Lekina in order in terms of relevance to the question, the issue on we are discussing?
Order, members. That's why I was cautioning him that he was veering off the subject matter of the petition. Please try to stick to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'll be guided. It is good for us never to have any doubt. We are talking about compensating people, identifying whether they are rightful owners or not. So there is
to Parliament for passing. National Land Commission went and scattered around the Historical Injustices Bill, Swazuri and his team, and brought about what we are calling regulations, because they don't want to deal with something called a cut-off point. At what point do we deal with historical injustices? Is it 1963, etc., etc.? This is an opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Let me finish the point.
What's your point of order, Senator?
Mr. Speaker, for the consistency of this House, Mr. Speaker, nobody stood for Swazuri, Mr. Speaker. When in a different motion earlier, a different public officer was mentioned, my colleague behind here, Mr. Speaker, my colleague behind here was up in arms, Mr. Speaker. But when Swazuri was mentioned, nobody on this side even shook, Mr. Speaker. It's only Matsayo, it's only Senator Matsayo who is trying.
Order,
Can
Senator.
we be
Order.
consistent? Can we be consistent?
What's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I think people should take your ruling seriously in this House. When you have ruled on a particular subject, then it stays as a ruling. But when people keep on repeating the same mistakes, I think the whole country is watching, and it's not fair to see your rulings being discarded. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to you to caution my colleague and tell him that he should not go against your rulings in this House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
What's your point of order, Senator Malala?
Is it in order, Mr. Speaker, for this House to set a precedence where a member of a certain community is mentioned, the Maasais wake up? When a Luhya is mentioned, the Luhyas wake up. When a Kikuyu is mentioned, Kikuyus wake up. This is not a tribal house, Mr. Speaker. Let us rise beyond this. We are talking and handling matters pertaining our country. Thank you.
Order members, order members. Order members. Order members, order members.
Point of order. Point of order, Mr.
Order,
Speaker.
order. What's your point of order?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, because I stand to be accused because I'm the one who was defending Tobiko. In this particular case of Tobiko, the majority leader was not speaking of Tobiko as the CS.
Order member.
He was accusing Tobiko and the personality of Tobiko.
Order. Members, first and foremost, order members, order leader of majority. First of all, no community, nobody mentioned anybody's name, unless you are being suspicious of the way you conducted yourself. I'll give Senator Mutula half a minute to finish.
I haven't. So the committee that is the committee. Mr. Speaker, protect me.
Order. Whip.
The committee that is investigating this matter should do it quickly. Let's not lose the opportunity that was lost by the committee of CPIC to be able to set a precedent. What consists a hearing? What consists compensation? When should people leave their land?
Point of order. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I just want us to be clear and go on the record accurately. Senator Mutula Kilonzo, who's a member of the Senate Business Committee, should not mislead the House to say that this House has missed an opportunity when a report has been tabled and has not been withdrawn from the House. Is a senator in order to say that we have missed the opportunity?
Out of order.
Conclude,
Senator.
You know, the committee knows what I'm talking about. I don't need to repeat. So let's exercise those ghosts, Mr. Speaker, and get to the bottom of this matter as quickly as possible. Anything affecting a Kenyan, this House must rise above petty politics and tribal politics. Thank you.
Senator Mohamud.
Mr. Speaker, sir, let me also support this petition. First of all, it's very, very important that this bypass be built, because development for this country is very important. We must develop. The importance of the bypass to this city cannot be overstated. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, sir, compensation must be paid promptly to the owners, the landowners. I think it is terrible that the National Land Commission It's taking its time. And we wonder where they are waiting until, you come with figures that are impossible. Recently, we've heard about in the SRG and other programs where compensation has skyrocketed. And in fact, a lot of ill practices were reported. We only hope that this is a petition, the committee dealing with this expeditiously move on this matter, and the compensation be given to the people concerned. I personally will not support the issue of halting the road. I think the road must continue and people must be compensated, Mr. Speaker, sir. I support.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe land is an emotive issue, and I support the petitioners because I'm sure these people who have petitioned the Senate, this is the only source of livelihood they have in themselves. Mr. Speaker, we must protect land issues in this country. And as a Senate, if we get petition, we must actually critically look at them, because we cannot actually say the road construction should continue and people lose their land. That is impossible. So I think, Mr. Speaker, we should halt the project and allow the people to be compensated. And normally the wrong people are the ones to be compensated, because the list is already given here that these are the right people who should be compensated. And I'm sure Land Commission must be having another list hidden somewhere. And a very good example is a case in Isiolo, just simply because of lapsed project. A case that was decided by the court. Our brothers and sisters in Meru are taking away a whole ward in Isiolo County that is called Ngarimara, where we are having 2 MCAs, 2 chiefs, and almost so many number of assistant chiefs. Mr. Speaker, next week I'm going to bring a petition to make sure that we have also looked at that issue, because we cannot allow the minorities to be, their right to be violated. Land is an emotive issue. We have another issue in a place called Laigdera, where our brothers and sisters in Northeastern have actually chased away our people, and they are IDPs in another ward today. Mr. Speaker, land issue is a very sensitive issue that we should not take for granted and protect our cronies in this house. I thank you.
Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuunga mkono hoja ambayo imeletwa ya kuwalipa ridhaa wale wanaoathirika na bypass. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kweli kwamba serikali inazembea katika kulipa wale wanaoathirika na miradi ya kiserikali ya kimaendeleo. Kwa mfano SGR kule Mombasa, kuanzia kilomita 0 mpaka 20, mpaka zaidi ya watu 76 hawajalipwa. National Land Commission ililipa mashirika matatu 3.5 billion na wakaacha walalahoi karibu 70 bila ya malipo yote. Japokuwa tuliuliza swali hili katika bunge na tukaomba statement, lakini mpaka leo hiyo haijakuwa tekelezwa, na mpaka sasa wananchi wanalalamika kwamba hawajalipwa pesa zao. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ni muhimu kwamba serikali ikichukua ardhi za watu lazima iwalipe kabla hawajaingia katika ardhi na kuanzisha miradi, kwa sababu wengi wanaotakana kulipwa ni walalahoi, wakiambiwa wavunje nyumba zao hawajulikani wataenda kuishi wapi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono na ningependa kusema kwamba lazima walipwe kwanza ndio waondoke. Mradi usiendelee mpaka walipwe ndio waondoke. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Kibiru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, we have the backbenchers, so probably you are not seeing us. From the onset, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that I support the petition. But my concern is that we have delayed compensation, whereas we have borrowed heavily. So one wonders where this money is going if we are not compensating the people's the landowners whose land has been affected. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, is that delayed compensation, delayed money need to attract interest, because these people are losing a factor of production. They need to move on. They need to be able to be productive by way of getting the money now, because the value of the sharing today is not the same as tomorrow. So that kind of delay need to attract some interest. So the people who are looking at the issues of compensation need to factor in an issue of interest. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, at one point in time, I was wondering whether we are drifting and not being and behaving like the upper house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to pronounce myself on this petition. First of all, to congratulate the petitioners for bringing this matter to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, I happened to get an opportunity to visit a section of this bypass and to a place called Lain Tisa and Kapseret. And the complaints that the public have is a common thread. That's, Mr. Speaker, the issue of compensation for land to use for the construction of the road has really become a thorny issue. Mr. Speaker, I want to associate myself with the previous speakers, senators who have spoken on this matter, and to say that, Mr. Speaker, there can never be a continuation of this project before people are promptly and fully compensated. Mr. Speaker, I seek that you call members to order, they listen to what we are saying.
Consult in law terms, honorable members.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker was saying that the value of this project is set at 5 billion Kenya shillings. The compensation figure is set at 4.2 billion Kenya shillings. Kenyans are being asked to get out of their land, out of their homes, for these works to continue, but nobody is giving them money for resettlement. Nobody is compensating them, even for houses that have developed cracks arising from activities of the contractor. The Speaker, the other issue that I saw, and it's in this petition, the Speaker, is a matter of workers and skilled labor that's being used along this road. The Speaker, there have been numerous complaints, not just in this section of the road, but in other sections of the road, where a contractor comes to site and brings on board unskilled laborers from outside the region. And yet there are people within that region who are able to undertake the works that are being done by people from outside. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Hagura.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support the petitioners. We have interacted with them when we visited the bypass. And Mr. Speaker, as Senator Wambua has said, the cost of the compensation is almost the same amount as the cost of the project. The government borrows money to construct a road, but it's the responsibility of the government to resettle or to compensate the landowners. But now it's assuming that the landowners will stay just like that. It's telling them to move out. So, Mr. Speaker, we have to make sure that
Order,
Kenyans
members. Let's consult in law terms.
are not dispossessed just because of a project. The road is important, yes, but the livelihood of those Kenyans is more important, because by bringing the road, those are the people you're trying to serve. But if they are the ones now you're impoverishing so that they can get a road, that is the wrong way to go, and we are going to take the petition seriously. Then we make sure that the government promptly pays the affected persons before the project is started. Thank you.
Senator Chererge, what is...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. The reason I support this petition is the petitioners had approached me and I had advised them to bring it to the Senate. I want to agree there is a problem because it affects part of my county because we share the common border. And I know this project will cost 5.1 billion and around more than 4 billion should be in a paid compensation. What I want to call, and I agree with most of my Senate colleagues, the law is very clear that when you are doing compulsory acquisition of land, the payment should be prompt. So I request, Mr. Speaker, sir, even as we go through this petition, the project should be suspended. The UAE company should move their machines until the owners of the land are fully compensated and satisfied, then the project can proceed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Finally, Senator Matzayo.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, kitu cha kwanza napenda kuwapatia kongole wale ambao wameleta haya masuala haya. Petitioners. Na hii ni kwamba hawa watu wanasikia uchungu sana kwa sababu ardhi yao imechukuliwa, malipo hayajalipwa, ama wako hapo na wameambiwa wataondoka ama watafurushwa bila kwamba watapata hiyo haki yao. Kitu cha kwanza, Bwana Spika, mchezo huu unaendelea katika nchi nzima, sio sehemu hii peke yake. Nchi nzima, manake mpaka Kilifi County imekuwa affected na mambo kama haya. Kwa sababu nikisema hivi nasema na uchungu sana. Watu wanakuja kule, Bwana Spika, wanaweka fence ndani ya nyumba, kuna villages, kuna makaburi, kuna misikiti, alafu wanaweka magreda, wanavunja kila kitu, wanaondoa hata makaburi ya watu bila heshima. Bwana Spika, kama kutakuwa na mradi fulani ambao unatakana kufanywa, wananchi wa pale lazima waambiwe na lazima walipwe ridhaa zao ndio waweze kuondoka. Mambo ya kufanya kama SGR hivi sasa, mateso yanayotendeka kule Mombasa, kama ndugu yangu Bwana Fakii alivyosema, Mheshimiwa Fakii, ni ukweli kabisa ya kwamba hawa watu mpaka sasa hawajalipwa. Bwana Spika, ni muhimu sana kwamba swala kama hili sisi kama bunge la Senate tuliangalie kwa umakini sana. Asante Bwana Spika.
I can see Commissioner Cheriot. Okay. Let me give you an opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the very onset, I want to say that I stand with the petitioners. Because on matters fashion, Mr. Speaker, I swim with the current. But on matters human rights, I stand solid as a rock. The petitioners have been taken round in circles. They have been around all government offices, yet nothing is forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, the problem that you are having, if you listen to the complaints that have been raised by colleague senators, is that we have racketeers masquerading as project managers in this country, where they are managing government projects, but in the pretext of it, all they are doing is that they are profiting from public money. If you go deep into the detail of this matter, you'll realize that there are people who have been paid, but they are not actually the genuine landowners. Therefore, the poor and the downtrodden of this country have no other hope other than to look up to this house, and we must serve them justice. We must stand up against all masqueraders, Mr. Speaker, including land grabbers and tribal bigots masquerading as environmentalists. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order members. Order members. Order. I hope, order members. The commissioner is using, order members. The commissioner is using very heavy vocabulary. Okay, honorable senators, order. Pursuant to standing order number 2321, the petition stands committed to the Standing Committee on Roads and Transportation. In terms of standing order 2322, the committee is required in not more than 60 days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Lead of majority.
The Speaker, there is loud consultation in the House.
Yeah, let us consult in low tones.
The Speaker, thanks to the big English from the Commissioner of the Speaker, Senator Cheriot. There's a consultation as to who is who. The Speaker, I'd like to beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 27 September 2018. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kakamega County Trade Loans Fund for the year ended 30th June 2017. The Speaker, report of Auditor General on financial statements of Kakamega County Trade Loan Fund, Mkopo Mashinani, for the year ended 30th June 2016. The Speaker, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Vihiga County Community Empowerment Fund for the year ended 30th June 2016. The Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order. Senator.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Thursday, 27th September 2018. The report of the Standing Committee on Energy on its consideration of the Petroleum Bill, National Assembly Bill, number 48 of 2017.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator Kangata, Moranga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 47.1, I rise to issue a statement on the issue of general topical concerning regarding the danger posed to society by hyperliberalism jurisprudence of the Kenyan courts. Mr. Speaker, hyperliberalism jurisprudence is a concept that centers on the values of the individual liberty, equality, limited government, and the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, under the circumstances, though these values are quite important to the human rights concept, they do also tend to compromise the cultural values of our people. Mr. Speaker, I make these statements because my attention has been drawn by several court decisions rendered by the High Court on issues of religious and moral ethics of the Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, in the recent past, the court has made decisions regarding human rights organizations. Mr. Speaker, I refer to you to two decisions that were made by the court recently. Number one, Mr. Speaker, there was a decision which allowed a so-called human rights organization that purportedly fights for the rights of the people who believe in same-sex relationships. It was made to be legalized. There was also another decision, Mr. Speaker, regarding a certain movie, which movie will corrupt the morals of our children. It is called Rafiki, and a temporary ban, which had been given by a certain body. A court order was issued allowing that movie to be shown to our society. Mr. Speaker, again also, my attention has been drawn by a decision by the High Court which compelled the registrar to register a movement called the Other Society of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, in all these cases, the jurisprudence that underpins this decision is what is called hyperliberal interpretation of the Bill of Rights. The courts in the foregoing decisions has argued that otherism and same-sex relationships may be protected under the Bill of Rights pursuant to Article 27, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, it is true, I agree, Article 165, Sub-Article 3 grants the High Court power to interpret the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, however, Article 93, Sub-Article 2 gives Parliament the power for representation. And therefore, pursuant to this article, I hereby express deep resentments to this jurisdiction by the people that I represent, the people of Muranga, who feel that the courts, they now want to impose upon us negative ideology, which appears to argue that we should allow victimless crime. Mr. Speaker, allow me to give 5 reasons why I disagree.
Let's consult in law terms, members.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to give 5 reasons why I disagree with those decisions. Number one, vast majority of Kenyans don't support gay relationships in this country. And Mr. Speaker, that has been confirmed by surveys which can be conducted in this country. And Mr. Speaker, Article 1 of this Constitution, and I would like to read this Article 1. It says, Mr. Speaker, Article 1 of this Constitution, Sub-Article 1, it says, all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance of this Constitution. Sovereignty means ultimate political authority. And therefore, the Constitution vests ultimate political authority on the people. And therefore, if the people of Kenya oppose gay relationships, the same court should also uphold that. They should not be coming here to Kenya to impose gay relationship. And therefore, I am opposed to that jurisprudence that is being pushed by our courts. Mr. Speaker, the courts appear to be encouraging these relationships, and therefore, those decisions are counter-majoritarian. Number two, this jurisprudence undermines rationality under which other penal offenses are predicated upon. Because if you allow gay relationships, there will be no reason why you are not going to legalize marijuana, you are not going to allow bestiality, you are not going to allow suicide, you are not going to allow incest, because you can as well say it is the people's choice. So therefore, we must oppose that decision. Otherwise, you are going to open a Pandora box where Kenya is going to allow marijuana, is going to allow bestiality. Yes, it is going to allow suicide, it's going to allow incest, because they'll be saying it's consensual sex. So therefore, we must oppose this, the jurisprudence which is being churned out by the courts. Number three, this jurisprudence undermines constitutionally protected institutions, like the institution of the family. Mr. Speaker, allow me to read to you Article 45 of the Constitution. Article 45 of the Constitution provides in express terms, and I'm going to read to you, Mr. Speaker. Article 45, sub-article 1. The family is the natural and fundamental unit of society and necessary basis of social order, and shall enjoy the recognition and the protection of the state. So meaning, the courts, this parliament, and also the executive have a constitutional duty to protect the family. Remember, Mr. Speaker, I'm a newly wedded man. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to tell the courts they must protect the children. They must protect our family units. When you allow these vices to continue getting embedded in our society, you are going to erode this institution. Number three, Mr. Speaker.
Number protection. If you look at the penal code, there's no room for the kind of things that is worrying Senator Kangata. But I agree with him that if ever there will be any decision that made legal what Senator Kangata is trying to say, then some of us will be very ready to challenge at the appropriate fora. But as far as I know, like the film which is complaining about Rafiki, it was not a question of the practice, it's a question about freedom of expression. Is being seen from that context, the movie, not what is in the movie, but on the basis of the freedom of expression.
Point of order.
Proceed, Senator Kangata.
Yes, senior counsel is arguing that that movie was looked from the angle of freedom of expression. And therefore, because it's just an issue of expression, probably it was allowable. So the question maybe I would like him to explain to us, being a senior counsel. Assume, for instance, Al-Shabaab was to come up with a film and then proceed to say, no, we want to show this film in Nairobi. It's our freedom of expression. Do you think then, on the basis of that judgment, Al-Shabaab can as well say, no, yes, we should be allowed. It's our right to express ourselves. To me, I'm saying, no, that movie ought not to have been allowed, because that is how it is going to form a precedent that is going to open a Pandora box. That's the reason I'm opposed to it.
Order, Senator Kangata. I want to bring to...
Of all creation. Full stop. I don't need to explain. For those who want us to go in areas of theosophy or areas of theology or philosophy, they will go. Because the attributes of God are very clear. We are told we are created in the image of God. And God is far
for the right. So I have consulted the matter. And
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 61.3, following the request of the Senate Majority Leader and consultation with the Senate Minority Leader, I therefore defer the division of the Petroleum Bill, National Assembly Bill number 48 of 2017 to next Wednesday. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, establishment of youth polytechnics in counties.
Senator Kamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion: that aware that youth polytechnics, also known as used to be known as village polytechnics, and now vocational training centers, are educational institutions that offer primary school leavers and secondary school leavers opportunities to acquire relevant knowledge, especially technical and vocational skills, to increase their employability. Further aware that youth polytechnics provide industrial and entrepreneurial skills training to young people in order to increase employment opportunities, reduce dependency levels, and increase self-reliance among the youth. Recalling that in 2005, the Youth Training Department of the then Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports was established through the Presidential Circular Number 1 of 2005 with a mandate of revitalizing the youth polytechnics then countrywide in order to empower youth through provision of accessible, appropriate, and quality training in technical, vocational, industrial, entrepreneurship, and life skills. Cognizant that youth polytechnics are a devolved function, persuaded that vocational education and training is a critical aspect of a developing economy, and that it would contribute towards the realization of the Big Four agenda. Concerned that in Kenya, the number of young people who have completed the primary school education but have not joined young people who have completed a primary school education but have not joined secondary schools continues to rise by the day. Further concerned that county governments have not prioritized youth polytechnic functions despite the polytechnic's capacity to ultimately contribute to both social and economic development. Now, therefore, the Senate calls upon each of the 47 county governments to A, establish youth polytechnics in every location within their respective areas of jurisdiction, and to revamp the already existing youth polytechnics. B, to develop a structure or guidelines for sensitizing the youth who have completed their primary school education but have not joined Form 1 to embrace vocational training in order to acquire the necessary skills to join the labor market. Mr. Speaker, we have just come from a very nice tour of the training institutions of UASIN GISHU with the Committee of Education, led by my chair here. We managed to go to an ECD center, and we visited Mugundoi Vocational Training Center, among other institutions. The number are going for something called housing in the Big Four.
Economic development. Now, therefore, the Senate calls upon each of the 47 county governments to establish youth polytechnics in every location, the respective jurisdiction.
Who can be able to go through there. The other amazing thing is that those who are physically challenged, those who may be mentally challenged, one of the things that you can access them is towards this vocational training and technical training. They can achieve their potential. And I know that the special needs for these children, children with special needs require this type of training, the vocational training, so that they help their living through this process. Therefore, it serves a multiplicity of interests, from local, normal children who are moving through the horizontal line, then vertically, they can even go to the technical universities and be able to be productive in society. These are the people who produce wealth. These are the people who sustain the economy. These are the people who sustain the industries. Now, you can imagine there's so much building industry going in Kenya today. Where are the plumbers? Where are the electrical engineers or electrical electricians? Today, we are doing the last mile connection. Where are the electricians in being able to do the maintenance when these lines break down? An ordinary mwananchi nyumbani hawezi kujua kwamba, you will not know, sorry, they will not know that there is a breakdown in their electricity line. But if you have a simple electrician who is properly trained, who is certified as a trained electrician, they can be able to handle these things. We're doing a lot of water connections. The plumbers will come into place. We're doing a lot of irrigation now in our centers, in our various places, in arid and semi-arid areas. These are the people who come in. We're doing a lot of agriculture. These are the people who will be required to be in this place. So in essence, there is tremendous potential and wealth in this institution. And I think if there's any one motion to be supported, is this motion. Therefore, I support it.
Senator Gertrude Msuruve.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. And before I even give my contributions, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank Senator Professor Kamar for coming up with this important motion that addresses devolution. Mr. Speaker, as a Senate, we are mandated to protect the country and the interests of the counties. Mr. Speaker, this motion squarely falls under the Senate, and I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we need to make devolution a reality. And Mr. Speaker, we will be judged harshly if we do not make devolution a reality. And Mr. Speaker, we will also be commended as a Senate if we ensure the devolution is a reality. When we are talking of village polytechnics, Mr. Speaker, these are polytechnics that would serve all the children, all the youths in this country, Mr. Speaker. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that for a number of reasons, you'll find, Mr. Speaker, some children are not able to proceed to secondary schools. Sometimes they're not able to proceed because the parents lack fees, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes they're not able to proceed, Mr. Speaker, because they're not academically endowed. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that not everyone must go through the academic line. Mr. Speaker, we must learn to nurture talents. You will find some people may not go through academics, but they're very good in blue-collar jobs. You'll find when it comes to masonry work, they do very well, yet they have not gone through the engineering training. You'll find when it comes to being saloonists, when it comes to being welders, mechanics, Mr. Speaker, you'll find there are people who are just gifted in that, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that there's need for us to really nurture this kind of people. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, and that is the essence of the competency-based curriculum, Mr. Speaker, because we need to nurture talent, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been visiting special schools in UASIN GISHU, and we stopped at Kapsoya School for the Deaf. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge this county government of UASIN GISHU, Mr. Speaker, because they do not have a secondary school for the deaf. And Mr. Speaker, when I looked at those children, I sympathized. I was heart crushed because I asked myself, where do these children go after they finish class 8? Where do they go? Mr. Speaker, even as you're talking of polytechnics, youth polytechnics, let us remember also children with disabilities who also need to be in polytechnics, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I am saying this because I know that most of the time we have left our children with disabilities behind, Mr. Speaker. And it is time as a Senate, we also remember that whatever we are doing, we must include a disability perspective, Mr. Speaker, because we should not leave them, Mr. Speaker. Children with disabilities also need that component. And we are saying, Mr. Speaker, it is important for youth polytechnics to be in all the 47 counties, Mr. Speaker, and even where there is a youth polytechnic, there must be a special unit, Mr. Speaker, that will address disability, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is a noble motion that should not just go like that, Mr. Speaker. It should be a motion that should translate to a bill, Mr. Speaker. Why am I saying this, Mr. Speaker? It's because it addresses devolution. It addresses the counties. Our Senate, we are keen about counties. Mr. Speaker, there's some youth that finish class 8. After that, they have nowhere to go, Mr. Speaker. If they have nowhere to go, eventually they will become idle. What happens when youth are idle? They'll turn into doing things that will not be good, even for this nation. If they become idle, they'll get into drugs. They'll begin to do many things that are not really pleasant. Mr. Speaker, we have to redeem this nation and ensure that we are making use of our youth who have talents. Not everyone can go through academics, but we have to see how we can tap that talent, Mr. Speaker, because youth polytechnics can create training for them. Eventually, they'll get jobs, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say that creation of jobs is important for our youth, Mr. Speaker. And youth polytechnics can help in creating jobs, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, even when you're talking about youth polytechnics and coming up with youth polytechnics, there is every need to ensure that the youth polytechnics are fully funded, are fully fledged, have the capacity, the human capacity, have even trainers who are even on the payroll of the counties, Mr. Speaker. Coming up with youth polytechnics and not coming up with the trainers is not enough, Mr. Speaker. It would be very unfair to do that, Mr. Speaker. And even when you're talking about youth polytechnics, there is need for infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. We must invest in youth polytechnics, Mr. Speaker. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, we must embrace our youths. We must embrace our people, Mr. Speaker, because we don't want to lose any one of our youth, Mr. Speaker. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, we have also to nurture and appreciate blue-collar jobs, Mr. Speaker. Not everyone can be in the office, but Mr. Speaker, we can have people also having blue-collar jobs and being very productive members of this country of ours, Mr. Speaker. Every one of us in this country must add to development of this country, Mr. Speaker. So we have to ensure that we are embracing everyone. We are embracing the youth. We are embracing people with disabilities, Mr. Speaker. There is need for that support, Mr. Speaker, and I want to strongly support this motion that Professor Kamara has come up with, and my prayer, Mr. Speaker, is that this motion should even translate to a bill, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity.
Senator Milko.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this chance to also contribute to this motion from Senator Professor Kamar. And I wish to say that our youth polytechnics is long overdue. And it is my prayer that, as my colleague has already stated, this motion will be developed into a bill, because the youth polytechnics, Mr. Speaker, sir, are areas where we can use to nurture talents from our youths that we have been told are so many in the villages right now. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm glad that if these polytechnics were right into the villages, even those women that have been married up before they completed any useful skill would be able to join these particular polytechnics. Mr. Speaker, sir, our Vision 2030 and our 4-pillar agenda for the Jubilee government is premised on the fact that our Kenya should be an industrialized country by that particular year. And in any case, will require a lot of talents, and in this case, competence, to ensure that we have the required skills to drive our industries. Mr. Speaker, sir, right now, we have been complaining about the issues of the Chinese coming to our country to make our roads, or even to continue with other various industries. And in any case, they come along with their own skilled labor because of the fact that they know Kenya, in this case, have ignored that very important talent right in the villages, because most of the education in Kenya was in line with the white-collar jobs. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sure these polytechnics, if they were developed, will go in line with the new curriculum in education that in this case is going to enhance that is such talents just away from just the theories and many of the things that we have been just telling on in the past, or rather since independence. Our country's education in this case has been majorly preparing people for the white-collar job. I'm sure this one will be away from that particular kind of education, and therefore, come the future, we shall have the labor to work, or in this case, to be developed into small entrepreneurs. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to say that at least 70% of the population in Kenya are the youth. That has a lot of energy, and we need to tap this particular energy, in this case, through taking our youth, first of all, to the polytechnics, and in any case, this should serve as a cure to one social aspect, Mr. Speaker, of the issue of rural-urban migration. I'm sure if any one of these or all of these senators or asked to stand up, they'll tell you that they have a huge list, or in this case, they have piles and files of requests for jobs in Nairobi, because our youths are imagining that we in Nairobi can be able to provide them with jobs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, once these youths are in Nairobi, they are also going to create problems such as drugs and substance abuse. We also have criminal activities that are taking place, or in this case, that we are witnessing in the cities. And if these polytechnics were set up to the local villages, I think we shall be able to solve not one problem, but several problems, Mr. Speaker. From the motion, we've heard that the major challenge, even in the various polytechnics, Mr. Speaker, was the fact that many of our youths normally are discouraged from joining these technical institutes, so in this case, the polytechnics, because of a very bad mindset. I think this is a challenge to the leadership in this particular house to go back and be able to carry out sensitization activities in the counties, so that our youth will be able to realize that going to the polytechnics is not for those who have failed, because from the move of the motion, we were able to realize that only 25% of those who complete Form 4 will be able to join the university, Mr. Speaker, and therefore about 75% are left in the villages. And therefore, what it is that these should be encouraged to join another alternative institution to be trained, so that in future they become useful members of the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, you will realize that those industrialized countries such as China, Japan, and even the US, at independence, we were almost at the same level, particularly China. But then what it is that they ensure that that education that will encourage industrialization was taken right up to the villages. And right now, I think China is an area that we can call an IMF to various countries in Africa, or in this case, we are now running to China for to be loaned, or rather to obtain funding for various developments, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was encouraged today to learn that our government has already set aside funding for those students that join at the DVET, or in this case, vocational education, because school fees has been a challenge. And today we have learned from the chair education that already there is a help loan of 40,000 and funding from government up to 30,000 that can be used by those students who are able to join the polytechnics. And therefore, we should go back and encourage our youth to be able to join these particular institutions so that come the future, our country can also be able to develop into an industrialized nation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm sure our country is crippling a lot with the issue of unemployment. And in this case, the reason why there is a lot of unemployed youth is because of the fact that we have not redirected the skills. We have not redirected our youths back to the villages, back to where they can be employed. I think we are talking about even issues of agriculture. Agriculture in this case would require skills. We are talking about the crops in the villages. We are talking about even mending vehicles, even motorcycles. Our country of late has, in this case, the motorcycles business that is booming a lot. And then in any case, would require those kind of people to work there. When we visited Kisii County, Mr. Speaker, we were able to enter into a unit, MRI unit, and we did realize that there was an individual working in that particular hospital that only acquired skill through vocational training. In fact, we were surprised. He was one of the best. And then for us, we were imagining maybe he wanted to be trained in a very high university, Mr. Speaker. But then we did realize that he went to a vocational training college, and then he was one of the best MRI, that is operator, in that particular hospital, Mr. Speaker. I think there are many other areas. So I would wish that we as leaders, when we go to the villages, we should even visit schools and begin starting mentorship programs to mentor our youth so that immediately they get out of schools, they are not going to wait only to be taken to the universities, Mr. Speaker, but then they'll know that there is another alternative avenue to be trained, and so that by the time they are finishing Form 4, and even those that are finished Form 4, they'll know that there is another alternative way that they can train, and eventually, in this case, they become useful members of the society. Mr. Speaker, with that little contribution, I wish to support the move of this motion and say that we are praying that in every location we shall have a polytechnic to be able to gather for this.
Senator Judy Pareno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Speaker. I rise to really support this motion. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we really don't have a choice in view of the devolution systems that are being put in place, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I say this because with the running of the counties as they are right now, Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of challenges that come with development, that come with new things, that come with devolution. And we can only address these challenges, Mr. Speaker, with innovations, with creative ways of handling the small problems that we have in view of development, Mr. Speaker. And I also think, Mr. Speaker...
Continue, Senator Zani.
Mr. Speaker, sorry, thank you. I under Standing Order 106 to request that we reduce debate time to 5 minutes, kindly, Mr. Speaker, to allow more members to contribute because there's a lot of interest on this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Senator Olekina. Before the chair rules on that, you cannot stand on another point of order. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I don't need to come before you and maybe confuse you in this, but I'm a little bit confused when it comes to the issue of this standing order. Because, and I don't know whether this standing order really applies to limiting a debate when the debate has already started. I know yesterday this issue came up, but it is good for us to be procedural. If we can be using this standing order, because the standing order is very clear. It says that any senator, a motion under paragraph 2, if you read 106.3, it says a motion under paragraph 2, page 73. It says a motion under paragraph 2 shall not be made in the course of the debate to which it refers unless it is moved after the adjournment of such debate and before the debate is resumed. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I know the decision is yours, but it's just important for us to be really guided in terms of how we apply the standing orders. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, in regard to the standing, in regard to the order that was read by Senator Zani, order number 106, it does not, it doesn't require the House to reduce the debating time to 5 minutes. But if that is the mood of the House, we can still reduce the 5 minutes, the 30 minutes per member to 5 minutes. So if that is the mood of the House. Proceed, Senator Pareno.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was saying that with the development that we expect to follow this devolution, then we need to get skilled labor to be able to match the kind of work that we expect to come out from these counties for us to be able to develop. Mr. Speaker, this morning, as we were coming from the hotel to this plenary, and even yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I saw, and I was touched, I saw a young man along the road who looked like somebody of unsound mind, because from his looks, Mr. Speaker. And this young man was seated by the road with some heap of some kind of rope that he was using to make baskets, Mr. Speaker. And I kept wondering, if somebody of unsound mind can sit somewhere and be able to do the kind of work that I saw this man do, what would happen if we did a lot of input in terms of empowering our youth? Mr. Speaker, I saw the man was every other morning from the day we came, has been there, has been doing a lot of work, is not talking to anybody. And actually, I later on approached the senator for this region, asking whether this is a man that needs rehabilitation, this is a man that needs some sort of training, this is a man that can be empowered through some of these technical institutions that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, a lot of our youths are unemployed, and I'm sure that these tertiary institutions is the way to go for development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the technical or polytechnics or vocational training centers are actually a bridge and a ladder for people to better their trainings, for people to even improve on their credentials, for people to use it as a ladder to move from one stage to another. Mr. Speaker, you can imagine somebody who dropped from Form 4 or even from Form 6 for those of us, and then from there you have nowhere to go to because you didn't qualify to the university. Mr. Speaker, this is a ladder up the scale for people to improve on their studies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you also notice that in the polytechnics, the courses are short. They are designed in a way that they are very short and they are cheap. And these courses are actually demand-driven. If you go to these polytechnics, most of these courses are actually demand-driven. You see that an industry needs this, you go for it, you train those people, within a very short time, they're out in the market. And most of the times, Mr. Speaker, because they are demand-driven, the market is there, the employment is there, the opportunity, the job opportunity is there. So, Mr. Speaker, instead of us having a lot of our youth out there, instead of us having people just sit at home with no employment or with no work because they did not make it to the next level of education, it is time for us to tap and ensure that the counties have this kind of polytechnics. Mr. Speaker, and I want to say that we should actually have polytechnics in each and every county. And if possible, down to sub-counties. And if possible, down to the wards. Because we are calling it village polytechnics. Can we actually actualize it to be a village, actualize that and ensure that we have village polytechnics that help our people to come up, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these polytechnics and these tertiary institutions actually combine theory and practicals. Mr. Speaker, I've always said I've always wondered why I was taught about Napoleon II in Form 6. I am a lawyer. I have never along the way actually used anything to do with, used in my practice. I have not gone into history to actually think and actually apply what I learned in a lot of what we were told about history. I kept asking myself, why was I taught about Napoleon II and I don't know what? Why was I just not taught how to behave in a court, how to read the law, and how to apply it? Mr. Speaker, some of these things are designed in such a way that they address the actual need that a community requires or we need in development, and that is better, Mr. Speaker, for us to be able to move. And then, Mr. Speaker, you also notice, if you visit any of these polytechnics, there are small classes, not these very big classes of over 200, 300 in a class. So you end up having somebody getting to the actuals training, theory training, the practicals, and it is a one-on-one with your lecturer, with your trainer. And you actually are able to give the best, of the students as you train. Mr. Speaker, I say this is a good idea. We support this motion, and we support that we should actually immediately ensure that there are some counties that have polytechnics. There are some counties that have tertiary institutions. There are some that don't have at all. Can we start with the ones that don't have at all? I support Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I therefore reduce the number of minutes that you need to contribute regarding this motion to 10. Senator Naomi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to add my voice to this very important motion of establishment of youth polytechnic in our counties. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this and also thank the sponsor because it touches on each one of us as a leader. And again, Mr. Speaker, we all know the dilemma that we are all in as a nation. We are proud to have many youth in our country, but again, we are saddened as leaders that the huge number of our youth in the country and in our counties are not employed, and at the end of the day, they are frustrated because they have no hope for the future. They have no one to guide them. And if today we sit here and deliberate on important issues without thinking of the young people who are not able to go beyond class 8, then we will not do any justice. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this, and my reasons of supporting this is because of our own experience. We know that almost half of the number of the students who enroll in class 1, half of them drop out once they finish class 8 or even before that. This exposes them to a lot of things, and it also promotes poverty in our country. Many of us come from the areas that we have always called marginalized areas. It is even worse for those students from those areas because the challenges they go through is so huge compared to the challenges that others come from urban areas. Madam Speaker, when our girls do not go beyond class 8, they are exposed to early marriages. And sometimes, because our area is known for tribal clashes, they lose their husbands even when they are very young. And they become so hopeless in life. But if we can enhance this and make sure that the polytechnics are established in all the counties, then we will empower the young students. We will be able to empower the girls and the boys, and they will be able to depend on themselves. Many parents invest a lot on their children. And one thing that we need to overcome as a nation is to call some of our children or our students failures. because those are the languages we use back in the villages. If one has not gone to high school or is not able to join high school, they all become failures, and we call them failures in life. That itself is traumatizing, and it brings their hope down, and it frustrates them. As a result of that, Madam Speaker, many of our young people have committed suicide, and parents who have invested in them from class 1 to standard 8 have lost a lot, and their hope of, one day their son and their daughter will give them that freedom and support them is shattered. And so it is something that we all need to support and stand for. Madam Speaker, as we support this, establishment of polytechnic in every county is a very important thing, but we also know very well that in all the counties, there is a lot of corruption. When it comes to tendering, they, give the tenders to their friends, to their relatives, or sometimes those in the offices end up benefiting from this. And they do some shoddy work, which cannot help the people on the ground. Madam Speaker, as we establish the polytechnics, it is good for us to also stress on equipping the polytechnics and also maintaining, so that the huge monies that the country is pouring or putting into in construction or establishment of polytechnics will be there even 20 years from today. As a nation, we know that we are very well known for just doing things for the sake of doing and not maintaining. And again, I would want to urge our young people, when they get these opportunities and go to the polytechnic, please give all your attention to what you are taught, so that by the time you leave, you will be somebody who can stand on himself or yourself and work for your family and also take care of your family. Today, many of us are complaining that our young people have no job, and when you go to every county, and I'm sure you can remember, Madam Speaker, even as we were coming, one young man was telling us that, please, senators, help me to get a job. Anywhere you go, that is their plea. That is the dilemma our young people are in. And because of that, Madam Speaker, this is my suggestion, that as we empower them, as we encourage them to go to polytechnic and study, let us also think of some funds, not only to educate them, but even to start some small businesses, so that when they go out, they will not just go out and go back to the street or, remain hopeless, but they can go back, form a group, and start their own businesses, so that they can be able to stand on themselves, on their own, and support their families. If we invest in educating them, and we cannot support them to start businesses, then our investment is useless and may not help them a lot. So let us think of how we can empower them and work with them. Our young people today are missing a lot in life because they have no role model. We all condemn our young girls because of moving with the old men who misuse them and at the end of the day they frustrate them. It is because they have no alternative. We as mothers, as we discourage them from doing that, what alternative can we give to our daughters? What alternative can we give to our boys so that they cannot be misused by older ladies? It is high time for us as a nation and as leaders to think of how we can deliver our young people from the problem and the challenges they are facing today. And if we cannot do that, Madam Speaker, this nation will suffer. We are already suffering, and we will suffer more. Thank you, and I support.
Senator Moses Wetangula.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I congratulate the distinguished Senator for UASIN GISHU for bringing this motion. Madam Speaker, because of the constraint of time, I'll be very brief. Madam Speaker, we have a serious shortage of skills in this country. I remember 3 years ago, a company that was undertaking a highway from Eldoret to Malaba wanted to recruit drivers for earth movers and dozers. And in the whole of my county, extending up to here, Eldoret, up to Kitale, Kakamega, they couldn't get anybody. There are drivers available, but they are not technically trained and equipped to drive earth-moving equipment and those heavy equipment. A year ago, Madam Speaker, I visited South Africa, and I found that South Africa is importing welders, fitters, and other technicians from Sri Lanka, from Malaysia, and from India to do their work. Africa is now growing, and we need skills. So in the process of approving this motion, I want the mover, Professor Kamara, to consider, A, that perhaps starting a polytechnic in each location is a bit too ambitious. We probably should think of in every ward, or maybe 2 serious polytechnics in every constituency. Because if we start in every location, there is a serious risk of lack of personnel to teach. There's a serious risk of lack of teaching equipment, because there's no point teaching technical skills without practical work using equipment that must be in the polytechnics. So if we can have polytechnics, 1 per ward, properly equipped, they can be able to serve the purpose for which we want. Number 2, Madam Speaker, is to realign the curriculum of technical training with the aspirations of young people. When a young person goes to a polytechnic and comes out and he's called a carpenter or a fitter or something like that, Africans. When an African was called a rat catcher, a Mzungu was called a rodent officer. When an African was called a Mchura, a Mzungu was called a sanitary engineer, and so on and so forth. Titles that also encourage people so that you can have an engineer grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, up to those who have degrees. Then when you are looking for them, there's an engineer with a certificate, an engineer with a higher certificate, an engineer with a diploma, then an engineer with a degree, or something like that. It will help. Number 3, it is also be appreciated that currently the national government actually pays fees for children in technical institutions. Every student is paid for 30,000. I've seen this because students in my county have been benefiting from this. So we should also align what we are doing to see how do we, when we create these polytechnics, tap into national resources so that we can be able to help children, particularly from disadvantaged and poor families and neighborhoods and regions of the country. Number 4, Madam Speaker, we need also to do skills assessment, skill needs assessment. We are moving into the oil production sector. We are moving into the extractive industry sector, mining of various minerals, prospecting of minerals, excavation of minerals, value addition to minerals, so that when we train these young people in these technical institutions, we are not just training them for the sake of transition, but we are training them in preparation for being productive in a growing and changing economy. This will be helpful, Madam Speaker. 4, Madam Speaker, we also need to condition investors that when you bring an investment into this country, whether you are an oil prospector, where you are mining, whether you are a Chinese building a line to somewhere, a certain percentage of people employed in these structures must be recruited locally if we are satisfied that we have enough skills. Because you'll find, Madam Speaker, that you go to any road construction today, you'll see Chinese nationals holding survey sticks, holding all manner of equipment that even our own youths can do. You don't need any special skills to hold a survey equipment to see that the road must be on a straight line or to mark the width of the road. We are seeing all this happening, yet we have capacity to train our youths to do this kind of jobs. Lastly, Madam Speaker, as we want to train these young people, in this country, a certificate is a key to everything. We must then strive to make sure that we don't train them, spend money on them, and then go back home to become border riders. We must find ways and means of absorption into the economy so that they see the worth of going to an institution post-secondary school or post-primary school so that they can be productive in a changing economy. Madam Speaker, I beg to support.
Senator Mary, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also giving me a chance to add my voice on this very important motion. And from the onset, I want to congratulate our host senator, Professor, for having thought deeply about this important function of the county governments. Madam Speaker, I want to remind this House that polytechnic education and the ECD education is a function of the county governments that we need to really support. It's one of the functions that the county governments must put a lot of resources in it. These are functions that the county government must invest in them. These are functions that the county governments must support fully without even leaving some parts of them being practiced elsewhere in the ministries. Madam Speaker, when we were going around with the Committee of Education, we realized that the county government of UASIN, GISHU, which I want to congratulate, have at least put some efforts in reviving some of their village polytechnics, which are right now called vocational polytechnics. At least I've seen some of these polytechnics having some equipments and also the county government sponsoring students in them. What do I want to say in this particular issue? I want to say that the county governments must make sure that they've equipped these particular polytechnics with the required equipments. And not only equipments, but the required equipments must also be of quality. These particular polytechnics must also be given proper competent tutors and enough tutors so that they can be able to give the skills that are required by these particular students. I also want to say that these the county governments need also to sensitize the communities the importance of these village polytechnics. Madam Speaker, when I say this, I know you know well the issue of Kajiado and other counties concerning these village polytechnics. Most of our communities, most of our students look at this or perceive these particular polytechnics as institutions of those people who have failed. And I think it is high time county governments take an initiative of educating the community to be able to appreciate and to be able to accept these village polytechnic as important institutions that offer important skills to our people. Madam Speaker, another thing that needs to be done to these particular polytechnics is marketing. I rarely see brochures or adverts telling students when the intakes are taking place. And I wish this can be a campaign that can be taken seriously by county governments to make sure that they have advertised, they have put in the vernacular radio programs, they have put in our social media, the intakes for these particular village polytechnics, so that our students and our communities can get to know when they are required to be enroll in those particular polytechnics. Another thing that I realized when we were going around is the issue of courses that are issued in these or that are taught in these village polytechnics. These courses should also be tailored towards the market. What does the market have at the moment? I admire one of the polytechnics we visited today was having a very nice equipped hairdressing section, which I think even professor was also given a good service this week there, which I actually thought I should also visit them to empower them, because they are doing good work. And that is a market-tailored thing they are doing. You cannot miss to get customers, you cannot miss to get work to do in those kind of skills. So the skills, the courses that are given in those polytechnics must be developed according to the market, and also according to the relevancy of the community. Some of our communities, we are doing dairy keeping, we are doing livestock keeping, we are doing agriculture, and right now, to even get extension officers is a problem. Many of our students have decided to go and do engineering, to go and do office administration, business administration, and our farmers are left behind without knowing anything to do in those farms. And right now, if we can introduce farming in agriculture in those polytechnic courses that are relevant towards what the community is doing in those polytechnic, at least these students can be able to be accommodated back in the community with something to survive on. I think the county government also should also partner with them. I saw a section offering mechanical engineering. I saw a section offering vehicle mechanics, which at least some of our people should also be visiting those polytechnics to empower those young men and women who are doing that work. I saw some of them who are doing hospitality, catering. Why don't we give them work when we are looking for workshop, when we are doing these capacity building workshops? Why don't we invite them to be able to cook for us, to serve us, and we pay them so that at least we can empower them? Finally, I would wish that the county government, through the association of these students, can support entrepreneurship skills. That is registering these students as association and be given money so that they can go and start their small entrepreneurship. Otherwise, I think this is the way to go as a country. This is the only way to save our unemployed youth who are every day alongside the roads, calling for cash, calling for handouts, which will not be able to help them in their lives. Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me a chance.
Senator Ledama Olekina.
Madam Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity. I rise to support the motion by the senator from UASIN GISHU of establishment of youth polytechnics in counties. Madam Speaker, I hold the view that, first of all, before we establish any of these youth polytechnics in these counties, we must carry out a skills audit and align it with the current development that we are having in this country. Madam Speaker, this morning we were sitting here going through the financial statements and audit queries of West Pokot. And we realized that counties like West Pokot, Because when I look at this motion, it's proposing that we should establish polytechnics, youth polytechnics, in every ward. Madam Speaker, sometimes I think maybe we aim too much and we don't understand the reality of things. A county like West Pokot, last year only managed to collect 80 million shillings. They were allocated 5 billion shillings by the equitable share. Madam Speaker, before thinking about establishing a youth polytechnic in each ward in West Pokot, we must first of all ask ourselves, what are the industries which are there? Do we have any industries that these youth, once we train them, they can be able to get local jobs? Madam Speaker, Senator Wetangula spoke about the oil industry. The oil industry is very key because when you look at, even in universities now, we are training doctors, we are training engineers. But when you look at the oil industry, for every one engineer, you need 12 technicians. Those technicians can only be trained in these youth polytechnics. But if we decide every county, every ward will have a youth polytechnic, I think we'll be missing the point there. So in my humble submissions, I would propose as follows, that the first thing we do is to carry out a skills audit. Every county should carry out a skills audit. We have masons. Everyone here is constructing. I construct almost on a daily basis. Maybe it's a fence, maybe it's a small classroom. And I just get a few people who are masons. Some of them are helpers. The first thing we need to do is to be able, since this issue is devolved of youth polytechnic, let's carry out this skills audit. Let's see how many masons do we have, let's say in Narok County. How many carpenters do we have in Narok County? How many plumbers do we have in Narok County? So that when we now get into the point of where we are saying we want to build these youth polytechnics, they can be career-driven. I would support county governments doing out a career day to be able to find out from the number of youth who are graduating from primary schools and maybe ending up buying a boda or a motorbike, to find out from them what is it that they want to achieve. Because once we build these polytechnics, we have one very good polytechnic, which is about 3 kilometers away from my home. And that youth polytechnic, it was a structure which was constructed. But the county government then missed an opportunity to attract more investors to be able to build student housing. So I think when we are looking at the whole concept, if we identify a location, if there is no private land there that can be used to build student housing, then the county government should be prepared to either build student housing or be able to offer land so that the students who are going to be coming there can be able to find a place to live and be able to learn effectively. Madam Speaker, we have the HELB, or Higher Education Loan Board, which I know when we were told it is providing about 40,000 shillings a year as loans to these students. Suppose now we train them. Let's say we train them somewhere in West Pokot. We train them, we give them the 40,000, but then after they graduate, they come to Narok, but there are so many other youth in Narok, they cannot get a job there. How else will they ever pay that money? So I think as we want to bring all these things, we need to be able to realign our existing resources. Look at what is it that we can be able to do and how we can be able to help this youth. One of the biggest problems we have in this country is that so long as something looks interesting, every county would want to copy it. Today, we were ashamed. Looking at the audit queries of West Pokot, it is like the former governor of West Pokot wanted to develop a city, a country of its own. It had Ardhi House, it had Maji House, yet they don't even have water. So I think before we spend so much money, let us try to understand. We align, right now, we're in a position where funds are being reduced, which are being sent to the county governments. And yet we are telling county governments, you must build these youth polytechnics. If we are going to say we must build this youth polytechnic, during the division of revenue bill, then we must ensure that there is an element that cater for the constructions of those youth polytechnics. We know there is donor funding that is supporting this youth polytechnic. I think, Madam Speaker, as I wind up, supporting this, I would say let us not just do it blindly. Let us look at what are the skills that we need. We know very well that once we sort out this issue of the petroleum bill, of the energy bill, we will then be able to have more investors come in, then we can be able to have more plumbers, more electricians, and we can introduce those skills or those courses in our polytechnics that already exist. And finally, Madam Speaker, it would be wrong for us not to ignore the existing institutions. We know most people, in fact, some of us who are even in this house, benefited a lot from the Polytechnic in Nairobi or Mombasa Polytechnic. But those institutions, they changed from being polytechnics to now universities. So that whole scope of work changed. So, in summary, before we move forward, let us do an audit. I would support this motion, but it would not make any sense to say we build youth polytechnic in every single ward. I would even suppose that in counties that are actually collecting very little money, we should only build only 2 polytechnics until those counties are able to generate more revenue, so that we don't burden other counties, or we don't, the money that goes in cannot support the entire population. It goes into budgeting for this youth polytechnic. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Agnes Zani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity. I just want to say that when education came, especially to Kenya, I think there was a sort of conspiracy, especially within the identification of the importance of sectors, be it white-collar jobs versus what we call blue-collar jobs. And to a large extent, people felt that unless you have a white-collar job, unless you make it to the university, that you must go to the university, otherwise you cannot eke a living. And yet, Madam Speaker, the evidence is to the contrary. Madam Speaker, the Education Committee this afternoon had a very, very, very nice time going to the Rift Valley Technical Institute, Training Institute, and we saw levels of engagement of training at TVET level that were very, very high. Madam Speaker, we even saw robots there that are already going to be programmed to do some of the work that might not be able to be done very, very adequately. For example, building or carrying very heavy blocks, for example, that can be done by robots. Madam Speaker, that was very, 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 very impressive. And it shows the level of advancement. In the developed countries, the issue of white-collar jobs is a non-starter, because evidence shows, and the statistics are very clear, that the unemployment rate is very, very high. And especially in Kenya, the TVET way is the only way to go. Because if we don't go into technical and vocational education and help young people start skills and start jobs for themselves, it's going to be very, very difficult. And that is the area that is expanding. Madam Speaker, there's even a good conception that it's possible to actually begin to have exchange programs. If you look at the papers, you'll find countries like Canada, countries like Australia, every day advertising that they want skilled labor within their countries. And this gives a very good opportunity for partnership between organizations and these countries, so that these young people who have been skilled and trained in these particular sectors can actually go and become the plumbers, they can actually become the artisans in these countries. Madam Speaker, in Canada and in Australia and in many other countries, technical and vocational training is very, very key and very, very important. And there's nothing about it that is seen to be demeaning, for example, because the qualifications for that have been given substantially, and also a chance to actually move on to the universities has actually been given. Madam Speaker, we all know the problem of youth in this country, and especially having had or having been brought up with ideas that they are going to be able to attain, to get very big jobs, to get very big cars, to get very big houses. And then suddenly, when they're not able to do that, it drives them into frustrations. So we know of many, for example, who have not been able to attain the sort of level of achievement they've hoped to do. And yet, this is a central aspect that they haven't really been able to go into and be able to go into and be able to try to bring it right up to the end. Madam Speaker, obviously, the issue of funding is very, very critical and immediately comes to the fore. And we now know that the government has made an effort, and we were informed this afternoon, for example, that up to 30,000 is paid per student, and about 10,000 to 13,000 are by the parents. And that enables these people to be able to actually go and get trained in all these trades. As Senator spoke earlier, we went into a room where we had hairdressing. We went into a room where there was mechanical engineering. We went into a room where there was civil engineering. We went to a room where they were making repairs for cars. And the labor market is actually waiting for this sort of impetus to really be taken to the higher level so that they can actually be able to move to a level where they can actually do the work. Of course, some sort of structure and guideline has to be put into place. And I believe, as Senator Olekina has said, some sort of skill assessment also needs to be made. Some sort of encouragement has to be done. And I think this is a systematic problem that we have dealt from the beginning, I think, from the sessional paper of 1963 on education, from the findings of the Ominde Commission, from the findings of the Swinnerton Commission. It was the same issue always. 844 was partly to address the issues of technical and vocational training, to give young people a chance so that they can actually be able to do other things and to create self-employment, Madam Speaker. And self-employment is going to be the key word now, moving forward, because we need to be able to have youth who actually have that expertise. But I think, Madam Speaker, also what happens is after they're finished with their training, and this issue came even as we were discussing on our field visit this afternoon about the funding. What happens when they have these skills? Where do they get the tools from? So I think the dynamic of also ensuring that after they have the certification, that they're actually able to be empowered in one way or another to actually get tools so that they can actually go out there and work is very, very critical, because minus that, they will not be able to move and be able to have an impact to do that. I think also there's a lot of variation at the various county level. And I think some sort of systematization needs to be done. And I think this is work that the Senate can engage into to actually make an assessment of the TVET institutions that exist across the various counties, to gauge them in terms of equipment, to gauge them in terms of execution, to gauge them in terms of the operations, so that we can be able to have some sort of uniformity. And also to be able to move on to be a little bit innovative about the training in the various institutions, especially TVET institutions. For example, if these are institutions at the coast, they should focus on marine, they should focus on fishing, they should focus on the blue economy and how they can actually be able to revamp that economy at that level. If it is, for example, in the Western Bloc, or in a maize growing area, for example, here in UASIN GISHU, the growing of maize using the technology, using appropriate methods to be able to do that. I think most of these institutions should be categorized and also organized in such a way that there is no blind replication, and that some institutions are specifically focused and actually very, very well endorsed of being able to execute their mandate, Madam Speaker. And for the Rift Valley Technical Training Institute that we saw in this afternoon, they actually have been given the certification for the best institution in the whole of East Africa. And they're drawing people from Lamu, from Mombasa, from Nairobi, from Kakamega, from Kiambu, a membership and studentship of almost over 3,000. So this was one very good model of actually seeing the success story. And I think this institute then becomes the basis of benchmarking from the other counties. Other counties actually need to be led in terms of delegations to come to this institute, which is actually has been recognized at the East African community level, and look at some of the issues, some of the challenges that they've had, and how have they dealt with those challenges. Madam Speaker, challenges, for example, even about the blocks that they have built, and the very innovative way that the allocation that they were given which was not initially enough. They were given 20 million, but they waited up to the 4th year when they had an allocation adding up to 80 million to put up a tuition block. That is a tuition block that when you see, you can actually see a lot of effort and input has actually been put there. So I think this point cannot be overemphasized. I think for Kenya, and especially for many developing countries, I think the direction is very, very clear. For the developed countries, they have actually already driven in and implemented the idea of ensuring that vocational and technical training and actually ensuring that people have these jobs has been put at a level where it is encouraged and appreciated by all. And I think that is the only way for Africa to go. And I appreciate that we have at the PS, Dr. Desai, himself an expert in TVET who has been doing a lot of work and putting in a lot of effort in this sector. And I think with the ministry and together with the Education Committee, we've started off very well. Senator Kamar has been also instrumental in the institutions and the way they have been built and the capacity that has come from them. And also to always remember that role modeling becomes critical and to encourage the young boys and girls in these institutions that they can actually make it and they actually can make a difference. Today, when we went and visited some of the schools and some of the institutions, we found young men and women who had a positive way of looking at life and a way of looking at the work that they do and the training that they do. It must be imperative for us as Kenyans to ensure that employment is either created and chances
Kindly wind up.
And the chances are given to them so that they can actually make a difference. It would be very wasteful for this country and a disappointment when a lot of investment has been made in that sector and then it does not turn out to churn out the young people who can actually make a difference to this country. I support this motion and I think this is the direction for us to go as Kenya and especially in the education sector. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa ya kuchangia huu mswada wa kuanzishwa kwa vyuo vya ufundi katika kaunti zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza ningeweza kumpongeza Senator Margaret Kamar kwa mswada huu ambao umeuleta mbele ya bunge, na ni mswada ambao umekuja kwa wakati mwafaka kwa sababu maeneo mengi ya nchi yetu kuna vijana wengi ambao hawana makazi baada ya kumaliza masomo katika darasa la 8 na form 4. Kwa hivyo mswada huu umekuja kwa wakati mwafaka kwa sababu ni fursa nzuri ya kuweza kupanga hizi vyuo vya ufundi ili kusaidia wanafunzi ambao wanashindwa kuendelea na masomo yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikizungumzia kaunti ya Mombasa, zamani tulikuwa na shule inaitwa Maganlal ambao walikuwa wanafunza mambo ya ufundi. Na mambo yalikuwa yakifunzwa hapo ilikuwa ni pamoja na ushonaji nguo, mambo ya useremala, mambo ya fundi mwashi, mambo ya fundi wa umeme na kadhalika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba wale wanafunzi ndio walikuwa wanashona nguo za kazi, yani uniforms kwa wafanyaji kazi wa Municipal Council of Mombasa. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, vyuo kama hivi vitatumiwa zaidi sio kuwafundisha wanafunzi, pia ni kuwapatia ajira wale wanafunzi wanaofanya masomo katika vyuo vile, ili wanapoondoka wanapata ujuzi pamoja na biashara ya kuweza kuendeleza maisha yao. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo muhimu ambalo ningependa kusisitiza katika vyuo hivi ni kwamba lazima kuwe na ushauri, yani mentorship. Vijana wengi wanaotoka katika vyuo vya ufundi, vyuo vikuu, hawajapata ushauri wa kisawasawa ni vipi watakavyoendesha kazi katika maisha yao mapya, iwapo ni mzamili, ni mwanafunzi wa uzamili, ni mwanafunzi wa vyuo vidogo vya ufundi, ni mwanafunzi wa labda wa hadhi ya diploma ama ya certificate, kuonesha kwamba ni vipi atakavyoendesha kazi na biashara. Vile vile katika vyuo hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, lazima pewe na somo la ujasiriamali, yani entrepreneurship. Ikiwa mwanafunzi atakapotoka pale hana ujuzi wa ujasiriamali, hiyo ina maana kwamba atakuwa ni mtu wa kutegemea kuajiriwa miaka nenda miaka rudi, na itakuwa inavunja ule ujuzi ambao ameupata pale, kwa sababu hawezi kujiajiri mwenyewe kufanya kazi yake kibinafsi. Kwa hivyo mambo mawili ningeomba yafundishwe katika vyuo hivi ni kwamba lazima kuwe na kitengo cha masomo ya ujasiriamali, entrepreneurship, na vile vile pia ushauri, yani mentorship katika haya masomo, ili mwanafunzi akitoka pale ametoka ni mwanafunzi kamili. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia katika sehemu nyingi katika Jamhuri yetu ya Kenya, mwanafunzi anapomaliza darasa la 8 anaachwa na ulimwengu. Sasa inakuwa sasa ni ulimwengu kumfundisha. Labda kuna sehemu zingine ambazo watu wameendelea kidogo, wanawachukua wanafunzi, wanawafundisha kazi za useremala, kazi za mechanic, lakini sehemu nyingi wanafunzi wanaachwa, wanakuwa hawana kazi. Na ndio inakuwa sasa ni rahisi wale wanaoingiza wanafunzi kama hawa katika itikadi kali, wale wanaoingiza katika madawa ya kulevya, wale wanaoingiza katika njia nyingine ya uhalifu, inakuwa ni rahisi kwao kuwatumia vijana kama hawa kwa njia ambazo hazitakikani. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu unafaa kuungwa mkono, japokuwa kuanzisha vyuo vya ufundi kwa katika kila wodi itakuwa kwa sasa ni vigumu, kwa sababu kwanza serikali za county zina upungufu wa fedha, pili serikali kuu pia haiwezi kudhamini mambo kama, lakini inafaa kwa kuanzia katika kila constituency tuwe na chuo kimoja cha ufundi. Wakati constituency labda ni kubwa sana, inakuwa ni vigumu wanafunzi kuweza kusafiri, inafaa kuwa na viwili kwa kuanzia, lakini ni mswada ambao lazima tuanzishe, kwa sababu hawa wanafunzi hawataweza kupata elimu sehemu nyingine yote isipokuwa wapate ujuzi katika vyuo vya ufundi. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia ile tunaweza kuita upungufu wa teknolojia umekuwa mkubwa sana, kiasi ambacho zile nchi ambazo zimeendelea zimetuacha sana sisi. Na vyuo vya ufundi kama hivi vitakuwa vinasaidia kuleta teknolojia karibu, iwapo ni ya ukulima, iwapo ni ya ufundi wa useremala, ufundi wa electrical, ufundi wa kila aina. Itakuwa ni rahisi kuleta ile teknolojia mpya kuja katika nchi yetu iwapo tutaweza kufanya vyuo vya ufundi kama hivi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kumalizia, ningependa pia kumpongeza seneta wa UASIN GISHU, Seneta Margaret Kamara, kwa makaribisho muru aliyotupa kutoka tulipoingia hapa Jumanne, na mpaka sasa nafikiri anaendelea kutuangalia kwa vizuri, na tuomba atupe fursa nyingine ya kurudi hapa UASIN GISHU. Asante.
Senator Chebeni.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to take this opportunity to thank Senator Professor Kamar for this timely and very important motion. Timely because as a nation we are dealing with the Big Four agenda and the 2030 vision. And this needs to be realized, and it can only be realized if we send our youths to technical institutions to acquire skills that will be critical in the realization of the two. Madam Speaker, youth polytechnics are very important in our society. It creates a skilled manpower, and eventually we'll have a skilled society. We shall have plumbers, masons, hairdressers, electricians, painters, among other technicians who are very important in our society today. Madam Speaker, having technical institutions, we shall improve and enhance our industrial productivity in terms of having manpower for our own local industries, and hence grow our local industries and eventually become an industrialized nation. This will create employment for our youths, and with their creativity, they will also create companies that will employ other youths who have the same skills. This will eventually generate taxable income for the government and also improve the overall economy of our nation. I want to agree with Senator Professor Kamar that we need to revamp existing institutions and create awareness among the youth, especially in the rural areas. Most of them are not even aware that these institutions are there for them. They're not even aware that, that school fees can be paid for them, the 30,000 that the honorable senators have been talking about. Also, Madam Speaker, I think we shall solve very many challenges among the youth of this country if we engage them in productive things, like, we'll solve the issues of unemployment, reduce dependency levels among them, the youths, and also the crime rates, I believe, will go down. Polytechnics, Madam Speaker, should be made available and accessible for our youths. I support. Thank you.
Senator Naomi Shionga.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the motion that has been brought about by Madam Senator Kamar, and I applaud her for bringing up this particular motion. Madam Speaker, this motion has come up in the right time to the right people, the Kenya government, especially during this devolution time that we are implementing. Madam Speaker, I would like to speak about many of the youth who we are in need of them being absorbed in these particular institutes of the youth polytechnics or vocational training institutes. The prevalence of young adults, young youths, or the youth, sorry, who are living with HIV/AIDS, it's over 300. It is the prevalence rate is very alarming, and over 300,000 young people in Kenya currently are living with HIV/AIDS. And what are the factors that contribute to this? Some of the factors that contribute to this is poverty. Madam Speaker, poverty is unforgiving in our communities. Hence, many of these young youths are looking for, they are searching for employment, they are searching for earning a living, they are searching for how best they can live, just like the other people in the community. And it is with this that many are getting trapped into being infected with HIV/AIDS. And soon, no sooner, we are going to get our generation or part of the generation in this country wiped out with this particular behavior if we don't actually engage this young youth, or the youths that we have in Kenya. Madam Speaker, I would also like to say, to support my colleagues who earlier said, who talked about aligning skills in various counties with the opportunities that are in those counties. Madam Speaker, it is very important that skills in, maybe let's take an example of Turkana, are not the same skills that will be found in the county where I come, like Kakamega. So it is the highest time those polytechnics or those institutes are aligned based on what is important to the population, or for the population of those youth that are living or are coming or are emanating from that particular county, so that we can make use of these youth and we can make use of the resources that are in that county. Madam Speaker, I would like to finish by saying that we need to reduce the child labor in this country. Most of our children, young children, especially in the age of between 10 and between 10 or below 24, they are employed as they are being abused when it comes to child labor. It is the highest time we create opportunities in this vocational training, so that we can reduce the number and the time that these children are going to be employed by those who go to waste or who are after wasting them in terms of employment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Minority Whip, Senator Mutula.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion, and at the onset say that as a Committee of Finance and Budget, and I wish I had read this motion before. Madam Speaker, the problem we have had, and I want to bring it to the attention of the mover, is that while this is a devolved function, national government has not funded it, either through conditional grants or shareable revenue. And to the extent, Madam Speaker, this function has not been funded, the little the counties are doing, we have not managed as a Senate to interrogate and audit up to what extent the budgets of counties are incorporating this part of Schedule 4 into their budgets and implementation. I think in the last budget, we requested the national government to consider a larger conditional grant, a grant specifically to every county in excess of 5 billion shillings, which will enable these counties to set up these village polytechnics. The issues raised by Senator Margaret Kamar Without a doubt. In Makueni itself, when you need plumbers, carpenters, you have to go and look for them in Machakos. Why? Because the technical institutes, except now that we have one, it's highly technical. It doesn't offer the sort of labor that you would require for simple things as electricity or carpentry. Although the national government is now building colleges, technical colleges, one in every constituency, Madam Speaker, it's not enough. The more as we go along, there are more young people who have cannot access university, more people who cannot access secondary schools, and they are becoming criminals. Some are in Nairobi. It was a mistake to convert Mombasa Polytechnic into a university. It was a mistake to convert Kenya Polytechnic into a university. We have a crisis in the country. But the ultimate goal, Senator Margaret Kamar, is to sit with CRA, and in the recommendations they are going to make for purposes of county budgets, we must have a specific figure, like the one we have done for roads, on village polytechnics. And once we ring-fence a certain amount of money from national government for the creation of these facilities, the next objective would be to check whether that conditional grant, and that is the reason why I am saying conditional. If this money is given to governors, they find a way of putting it into budgets for reasons other than village polytechnics. The members of county assembly are busy chasing for the equalization fund, and most likely will not see this as a good thing to do. A conditional grant where we are supervising would ensure that at the first instance, because I'm not quite certain whether we can, as proposed by Senator Margaret Kamar, that you can establish youth polytechnics in every location. This is difficult, extremely difficult. But we can come up with a structure. In a county, you can say at the beginning, let's have one polytechnic in every ward at the beginning, and cost it. It would make it easier so that then we can have things that we can target. Makueni has over 3,217 locations. It is going to take us a lifetime to attempt to do this vis-a-vis the sort of allocations counties are getting. I would have proposed a faster method. Put them in every ward. It's easier to manage them that way, even if we make them flagship projects. But the faster we begin defending this function, the way we defend the function of roads, and the way we defend the function of health, the better, so that we can offer an opportunity to the young people and even the old, because it's not only the young. We have skilled laborers, plumbers, who started their plumbing a long time ago, but they don't have certificates. There's a place in Nairobi near, I don't know whether it's Jamia or Koja Mosque. I confuse it, but it's on Moi Avenue. Every morning, there are Kenyans who sit there, Madam Speaker, who are either painters, plumbers.
For information, I think we have 1,450 wards countrywide, so it's manageable.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. And if the motion has proposed every county, every location in a county. And I'm saying if it was Makueni, you would have 3,100 to 3,117 locations, which would be much more difficult than setting up 1,450 villages. We have over 3,000 villages and locations. Yeah, the locations are less. Therefore, that would form a good basis for us to set up these polytechnics and make it a must. We have asked Treasury to give us money to build county headquarters, county houses. Speaker, nakubakishia dakika moja. Madam Speaker,
1 minute so that we have time for the mover to respond.
There's no reason why a motion like this cannot get the sort of support that we gave Senator Karue, former Nyandarua senator, to create 5 headquarters. I think, yes, 5, where they each got 465 million. It is possible. If we can cost how much it would take to have 1,450 youth polytechnics through CRA, we can make sure that in the negotiations that are starting in December, we can have a ring-fence, a budget to do this. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and to thank Senator Margaret Kamar for the wonderful hospitality in the County of Champions. Thank you.
Senate Minority Leader, and I would wish that you be brief so that we have the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Senator Margaret Kamar. For those who know, this is the work that Professor Kamar is taking forward from where she started, having been a lecturer at Moi University to a level of administration, to a principal of a whole college for over 21 years, if I'm not wrong. And thereafter, as a cabinet secretary, she was also passionate, and she was in charge of matters education, especially related to these technical institutions. So it's a passion that goes into who she is insofar as education is concerned. Madam Speaker, the good thing with these local polytechnics, whether they call them village or youth polytechnics, is that you don't have to know good English or good Kiswahili. You just need to be trained how to do metal work, you do brick, roofing, and so forth. You know, you can do masonry and so many other things, Madam Speaker. And I think if we want to deal with unemployment in this country, this is the direction we must go. And as a Senate, we must support. You know, the problem is that many of the counties, once we devolved to county level, many of them felt like to be seen to be working, you need to build a huge structure, a huge building. Or, Madam Speaker, that you must be seen to have tarmacked a road. Madam Speaker, you know, that even if you tarmac a road as a county government, you will use 5 to 10 years to complete a reasonable road to be tarmac. The most important things to do where you can have quick wins is to establish these youth polytechnics as structures and institutions for resolving the question of unemployment so that self-employment can be achieved in the counties. And therefore, because I don't think there is any reason why we should postpone this motion to spill over after Tuesday, I really want to say I stand here to support Professor Kamar and to thank her for coming up with such a very wonderful motion and for creating and imagining about us pushing counties. I agree with what Senator Mutula Kilonzo is saying. We can create a conditional grant purposely to support this area. You know, the good thing about conditional grant is that it is used to assist in perpetuating national policy. And since our greatest concern at the moment is about unemployment of the youth, we can take that advantage in the next budget to think through pushing county governments and ring-fencing money through conditional grants to ensure that at least every ward to start with has a polytechnic as we move towards locations and the other places. But at least if you have every ward in Kenya, 1450 youth polytechnics, then you can slowly move to sub-locations and so forth, and then can be supplemented by the TTIs that have been built in every constituency. So that where there is, in the constituency where the TTI has been, in the corner of the ward of a constituency where the TTI has been built, the other wards can start with the youth polytechnics, and then again we'll be able to supplement ourselves. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to support.
Having no further interventions, I now invite the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I appreciate all the members who have contributed. Senator Samson Ongeri, Senator Gertrude Musuruve, Senator Alice Milgo, Senator Judith Pareno, Senator Naomi Wako, Senator Moses Wetangula, Senator Mary Seneta, Senator Olekina Ledama, Senator Agnes Zani, Senator Mwinyi Haji, Senator Jebeni, Senator Naomi Shionga, Senator Mutula Jr., and Senator Murgomen. Madam Speaker, I really want to appreciate the contributions that have, because they have supported this motion overwhelmingly. I appreciate also the concerns that have been raised. I just want to clarify a few things, Madam Speaker. Number one is on the issue of what do we do first, whether it should be the location or the ward. I think that is going to be procedure. We approve the motion as is for locations, and the way you process it at the county level will be different from how we will end. But the goal should be that. And the reason I'm insisting the goal should be locational, Madam Speaker, is I've just given you the data from class 8 students that all of us should be concerned that the transition rate in Kenya is below 60% to secondary school. So you ask yourself, this over 40%, where are they? The highest transition is in Kenya is in the county of our leader of majority, Elgeyo Marakwet, and that they are now only at 78%. They're the ones who are pulling us a little bit higher. But still, they have a lot of students that are called dropouts, but they're not really dropouts. They are finished genuinely. They are class 8, but they are nowhere. My concern is, where are we going to park them? We must really give them an avenue for them to be skilled somehow. Number two, the training that has come with TVET these days is modular. You can even go for a training of painting only, and you paint and paint until you perfect your skill of painting and go out. And then after that, you can go back and do carpentry. So when I'm pushing for allocation is that let allocation provide, even if it's a classroom for tailoring only, but let the youth have an avenue where they should go. So I still feel that if every location can have an avenue for their students, the students will actually have an opportunity to be something. Because at the moment, our youth are really desperate. They are feeling there are no jobs, and they are feeling there's nobody training them. Since the government announced this year that their funding, it is now free, and we have seen our National Polytechnic saying it is free, fully free, you have seen that people have woken up, which means there are others that are looking at the parents, they cannot ask for money, so they are desperate to be somewhere. So we can begin with cheap, technical vocational courses. You can have the cheap ones, like the saloon that we saw today, fantastic saloon, full, completely full, and yet the investment is not that expensive. So it's how we process it. But I really support that we need to ring-fence some money in this for this, and the money that is conditional grants. Although I still ask the Committee of Finance, has the money really followed the functions? Have we released the money that is commensurate? We really want to hear the voice of our Committee of Finance so that we start fighting for what is rightfully for Schedule 4, because we want Schedule 4 to be implemented. And for us to implement it, we can even have other technical courses, including agricultural courses. 10% was signed by Kenya in Maputo. The same thing was signed earlier. We need to really look at how we can deal with that. So finally, Nairobi and Mombasa Polytechnics were not changed to universities. They are technical universities. And in fact, a technician can grow and enter the Technical University of Kenya, formerly Nairobi Polytechnic. The same thing with Mombasa Technical University. They are technical. Thank you, and I thank you so much for the support, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Senators,
And I beg to move.
Honorable Senators, I now put the question that aware that youth polytechnics, also known as village polytechnics, are educational institutions. What point of order?
Madam Speaker, I think this is a motion concerning counties. It's actually a motion concerning counties. And if I may speak on behalf of Senator, the move of the motion, I think it will be only right that we put it on a next day so that we can do the proper division. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Senators, thank you for that intervention. Having heard your submissions, we now rule that this is a matter that touches on counties, and therefore will have to be a vote by delegations, and that means that we put it off to the next order paper as we resume next week. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to interrupt the business of the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned to Tuesday, 2nd October 2018 at 2:30 p.m. in Nairobi.
In Nairobi. Good job.